Hello everybody, we are here today and we're going to talk about the lottery that happened last night, the NHL lottery, and then just kind of talk about, what that is impacting for the teams that were in the top four. Of course, we'll talk about Chicago, but then of course talk about the other teams. But we're going to start off with the other teams first. But before we do that, please make sure to subscribe to me. If you're new to my channel, new to me, new to Hockey, whatever the case may be, I'd love to have you here along the way as I try to do this as a career. Now let's talk about the draft lottery. And then, just really talk about how this impacts so many people. So, starting off last night was the draft lottery, and you had four teams in the top four. You had the Anaheim Ducks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the San Jose Sharks. All four teams especially had the best odds of landing Connor Bedard. All teams within the top 11 had hopes of landing Bedard. Ended up not happening that any team outside of the top four would get Bedard. We didn't expect them to, but let's see how it was impacted. So, with the fourth pick, San Jose ends up finishing fourth, and they get the fourth pick after they finished that way in the regular season, which is very unfortunate for them. San Jose was one of the teams that was in the spot towards the back end of the season to probably pick first in the draft, or at least have the best odds. And then they got like a 2 or 3 game win streak late in the year. It hurt them. And to be honest, this hurts because San Jose fans know very well that if they would have had, not a 3 game win streak and maybe even just won one game or whatever the case may be, they could very well be having Bedard in California for the majority or the whole part of his career, whatever the case is, and they lose that great talent. So for San Jose fans that are fans now, they're going to tell their kids, they're going to tell their grandkids, etc., going down on the line, all family members, all friends, about the time that they went on a terrible winning streak towards the end of the season and then ended up losing a generational talent. So there's San Jose. Now, the team that ended up with the third overall pick was the Columbus Blue Jackets. How did this draft impact them? Well, it impacted them very significantly in a great way. Columbus, a team that was also hoping to get Bedard, and they end up getting thrown at third. What does that mean? It means they're not going to get Bedard and they're not going to get Fantilli. So that means they're going to be picking third, which is not a bad thing. But also means that with Bedard being that guy that you really wanted, you're thinking, well, we finished second and we can probably stay second, so that's okay. Now you're not going to get that, and there's some things that open up a little bit after the top 2 picks. I don't exactly know how that's all going to go. We will do some more draft coverage as the draft gets a little bit closer. But yeah, so you have that there, and for Columbus, this is devastating because it was not a pretty season. It was hopeful to start off the year, and things just derailed early. Werenski got injured, Laine got injured, I think Gaudreau missed some time as well. And for them, you're hoping, maybe if we don't get Bedard, we're going to get Fantilli. Not going to happen as they go from 2 to 3. Now, this is where it gets more interesting. You have Anaheim. They are the team that finished worst in the league in the regular season. Did not think that they would be nearly as bad as they were. In fact, I was thinking that, maybe they push for a playoff spot and just fall short. They end up being the worst team. I think they lose 13 in a row to close out this season. What does this mean for them? At the end of the day, it means that they end up missing another generational talent. Back in the draft lottery for Sidney Crosby, they also had really good odds. Might have been first, I don't remember, but they ended up getting the second overall pick. So they miss Sidney Crosby now, and they miss the new up-and-coming shiny toy that is Connor Bedard. That stinks because Anaheim has not had super high picks in a while. I don't think up until a few years ago they hadn't drafted higher than 5th up until that 2005 season, and so that's disappointing. For them, at the end of the day, though, they're probably going to be getting Fantilli, and we don't know. But at the end of the day, too, I keep saying at the end of the day, my apologies, they are able to get a good player. It's going to be a really good player, but you're just going to be looking at this thinking, we did not have a great year, and we closed the year terribly, and we played pretty poorly. We underperformed. We got some guys, especially like Klingberg, that we were hoping would come in and get us to the playoffs. Didn't happen, and instead we were the worst team in the league. There you go for that. Now the juiciest part, Chicago. Chicago, of course, wins this by far. They are projected to be one of the worst teams going into the season, and they end up being one of the worst teams. Of course, they finished third worst, and they are able now to get the prize, the shiny trophy, which comes at a great time for them. What does this mean for Chicago? It means so many things. Starting off, you get Bedard. That's going to be great because he is slotted in as a guy that should probably play the first night and may very well be a top line center for them opening night. I don't know because, again, do you want to rush Bedard? That's up to them. I still think he's going to be there for opening night, and I do think that he will be a second line center at worst for them going in. Looks like they'll probably pair him with Lucas Reichel. That's going to be fun to watch there. But of course, right away, you're looking at a guy that can come in and just help you, boom, like that. You don't have to wait for him to develop in the CHL, in NCAA, in the AHL, whatever the case may be. You're probably expecting him to help your team out immensely and be one of the better players, actually, right out of the gate. So there's that. On top of that, too, you benefit so much because the organization has been through a lot. We know that with the incidents from what we talked about. I've done a video over that. I'm not going to try to bring up all that right now because, again, this is, that was something that was really dark. And if you are interested in that or just want to learn more about that, look up Chicago scandal. You know what I'm talking about. So you have that. And then on top of that, you have the organization that has not been good in a long time, and they have been dealing with a lot of the, the negativity of all that, and understandably so. But then you had that too, to where they're losing some of their star players. This was the end of an era. Jonathan Toews is probably going to be retiring. Patrick Kane probably will play elsewhere after being traded to the Rangers. The Hawks were really lacking an identity. They were a team that should be improving, but they're not going to probably make the playoffs next year. At least they weren't expected to before last night. And so they lost their stars. They lost their identity. They weren't a winning team. They weren't making the playoffs. All these things just kept on happening. And for a franchise that had really got used to a lot of success, that meant bad things. Now they have something to build around. They say, hey, take your eyes away from Kane and Toews. They did a lot of great things for us now, but look at this guy, Bedard. He's going to be the face of the franchise. He's going to go win us multiple cups as well. Why don't you buy our merchandise, buy our jerseys? And then that's big too, because for a brand that's as big as Chicago, this helps keep them relevant. While they might not be a team that is able to go on and win a Stanley Cup next year, this is going to keep them to be one of those popular teams. Now, of course, they're still going to be anyway because they're an original six team. But for fans around the nation, in Canada, whatever the case may be, you probably know or have seen somebody wear Hawks gear before because they are one of those biggest brands in hockey. This keeps it alive. And also, I think this is kind of a hidden aspect that not a lot of people realize, but this kind of keeps the regionality of things in a positive note for Chicago. Especially where I lived growing up in Indiana, this was something where this is Hawks country, and while not everybody's a hockey fan, if you're a hockey fan, you're probably a Blackhawks fan. So for them, with a kind of sense of owning Chicago, of course, they're the only team in Chicago, you got to think other places in the Midwest that maybe don't have a team, they're invested in Chicago because that's probably the closest team. They grew up, a lot of the kids that are my age, of course, I guess I'm not a kid anymore, but guys that are my age, girls that are my age, whatever the case is, they grew up watching this team that was really good and probably stuck around because, they just stuck around with how good they've been all those years. But on top of that too, you have fans that might have been ready to say, we're not as good as we used to be. I'm not as big of a fan of hockey as I used to be. I think I'm ready to be done. I think that brings them back into it. And I just read something, it was on Instagram, where Chicago actually has 500 more season ticket holders than last year. New members, that is. So again, you're looking at all these things, and for Chicago, they win. They get the player that is going to be slotted in to play for them right away. He's going to be the guy that probably is, I don't want to say the next McDavid yet because it is big expectations, but is going to be a really good player for them for years to come, hopefully. That could jumpstart this resurgence, this turnaround, and you are able to keep that brand relevant, which is so, so crucial because Chicago's brand has been on the decline for some time now, considering they haven't been good. Had to deal with all the backlash after the events that occurred, and then are losing their stars, whether that be to retirement or them going off another team. So for Chicago, this is the shot in the arm that they needed as they look to improve. And for the other teams, they really feel that they are missing out. I really think the biggest losers here, it's hard to pick one, but Anaheim, yeah. Columbus getting sent down to 3 stinks. San Jose, that's terrible too. I'm going to go Anaheim, I guess, because you were hoping that maybe they could get this generational talent. They don't. But again, you're probably going to get a good player, but Chicago is able to come out of this as the winner, in the Windy City is buzzing. So what are your thoughts on the draft lottery? Is the NHL rigged? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that down below, especially considering how big of a market Chicago is. If you don't think that, comment as well. I really don't mind what you have to say. I'm not going to give my opinion. I really don't think it is rigged, but I do think it is one of those things where, of course, it had to happen right now where Chicago is going to get this generational talent. But anyway, leave your comments down below. Also, make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night, and you go off hockey all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.